Hi, everybody. We're live. Thank you so much for coming by. We have a very special guest tonight. I'm very, very excited to be able to have not only the legendary inker in comics, but also an artist, a colorist, a penciler. He's really done it all and done it on the biggest projects imaginable. And that's covers a lot of ground. I've done some of the biggest projects imaginable. I've done Batman and I've done X-Men and Avengers, but I have not done Dark Knight Returns or Daredevil or all the work that you've done with John Romita Jr. That's some of my favorite stuff on Spiderman. I think it's the greatest combination of penciler and inker. You just bring so much to his work. I'm not even doing an introduction anymore. I'm sorry. You know what? We were talking this whole time. We were having a good time, and I realized it was time to start, and I didn't even think of what I was going to say. So I just want to say thank you so much to Klaus Janson for coming on and doing some drawing and some inking with us. And thank you all for coming to watch. And I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot. This is going to be a huge amount of fun. I'm going to go ahead and just solo your screen, Klaus.
Yeah. Can you see it? Yeah. It was the beginning of a cover idea that I had, and then I rejected it. So I thought it would be perfect to play around with tonight.
Now, why did you reject it?
I forget, actually. I think part of the problem was the leg was too long and it was starting to creep out of the defined space. So I'm trying to get it a little bit shorter right now, do it in perspective or 3D. But for our purposes, it'll be fine. I'll probably fix the leg after the stream. I'll work up here. I'll ink up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. I think it looks amazing, but I do know how that goes. It's we're always our own worst critic.
Well, yes, and that definitely serves a purpose. It makes, I hope it makes us better, as artists. I mean, there are things that I'm constantly discovering.
I just want to say quickly, we have a chat from Don Von Doom, and he says, yes, the master is Klaus Janson. I just purchased his DC penciling book, so this is great.
Oh, thanks.
And Samuel Reyes, same thing. He says, good choices. DC pencil and inking books are superb. Yeah, so I think this is going to be great. And, maybe to start, we could talk about what tools you're going to be using to ink this.
These are my basic tools. This is a nib that I use. It's a 103 Hunts mapping point is what they call it. It's just a very simple nib. I like these nib holders as opposed to the smaller ones. But I definitely, this is, pretty simple. I mean, I also use Japanese nibs and other, microns for straight lines. But on the jobs that I really, really invest in, I almost do everything with a nib and a brush. And go ahead, David. Yeah.
So never a 102.
I've tried it, and yes, you're right. Never a 102. I'm definitely a 103. We were talking before we came on just how much we're influenced by the things we read and the things that we did as kids, as teenagers. And the 103 was the nib that I found, as a kid. And although I've experimented with other nibs, and I love the Japanese nibs, they're very, very good, but they don't have the flexibility that I'm looking for.
They don't. I actually have some of those too. I've got Deleter Maru pen tips.
Sure.
And they're great. And I think that they're more sturdy. They last longer, but they are harder to get.
That is right. Or the G pen, which I like. But that's funny that you agree that they're very inflexible, to whatever degree. And
they are. And sometimes I feel like that's an advantage for me because I don't have the best hand control, but it feels really limiting pushing something that I feel like I'm just really pressuring to get a line out of. And you tend to work in a really expressive way with a lot of heavier holding lines. Now, I'm going to save this for later. So because I wanted to talk about, the way that you ink.
Sure.
Not just, in terms of tools, but also just in terms of, philosophy and the impact that's had on so many inkers and artists in the years since. But we'll save that.
Okay. So let me say this is the brush, just to wrap up the tools. This is the brush that I use. It's a Raphael Series 8402. They're kind of hard to get in America, but you can, get them. A number 4, Series 8402.
Now,
I guess that's Kalinsky. It might be difficult to get here.
Yeah, because of the harming the animal kind of issue.
Yeah.
So I've got a Raphael 2 8404. Is that a worse brush?
No, that's a good one too. I believe that has the orange tip. Does it?
It does. Yeah.
Yes, the orange tip sometimes turns out to be a better brush than the one without the tip, or the flesh color tip. So that's a good brush.
Okay, great.
And I thought that the Raphaels are the best brushes going right now.
Yeah, I got some Winsor & Newton Series 7 that I've probably had for 10 to 13 years. I've never used, so I guess I'll use it tonight.
Oh, good.
I think those
That's good. We're going to definitely have fun then.
Yeah.
A 7 is a pretty big brush.
Oh, it's the Series 7, but I think it's like a size 0, 1.
Oh, okay. Oh, well.
Might hit bigger.
Yeah. That will be fine. I use a 4 or 5 brush just because I like the, as David was saying, I like the bold line. Yeah. But basically, these are the 2 tools that I use. And I'm working on a job right now, and this is pretty much what I'm doing. I use Sumi ink, SUMI.
I've heard of that. I've never tried it.
Oh, yeah. That's what, Dave, that's what Greg Staples was using for ink washes.
I just want to say quickly, JDSCT, who's a mainstay of the channel, says Klaus loves Sacred Creatures he did with Pablo Riamondi. Such great books.
Thanks very much. We are working on the 2nd volume, which I'm sure is sending shudders in the comic book community.
And I saw JDSCT mention before the stream started that Lewis Hamilton has gone to Ferrari in F1. So I saw that. Yeah.
That's
big
Yeah,
news.
I'm no longer a Ferrari fan now.
Because of Lewis Hamilton? Or because what they did to Carlos Sainz?
Column A, column B.
All right, fair enough.
This is the Sumi ink, and I can't get it open right now. Wait a minute.
Actually, while you open it, I have a good question from Nick Clark, and he says, have you ever used shampoo and conditioner to clean your brushes? It's hair, after all. I have been doing it for years, and I find it works great and keeps your brushes soft.
That's a great tip. But I do not wash my brushes at all, ever. I swirl them around in a jar of water, like this, and just brush them up against a piece of cloth that like terry cloth that has fibers, and can pull the ink off of like this. I'll do this, and it pulls the ink, off the off the brush, and you can leave it with a point and sit it upright in a jar. But I found that that when I wash them with like there are products out there, I forget what they are. I wash them too hard, and it just crumbles. It just doesn't work for me. So, whatever works for anyone is totally okay. Yeah.
Dan Lassard said that Sumi ink is what tattoo artists use.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, me neither. There you go.
Oh, that's great.
And Ricardo Arts asks, does your ink react differently with the type of brush that you're using?
Yes. Everything has a different reaction depending on what tools, what ink, what
Yeah.
paper you're using. I find that the
Sure.
paper is very, very influential. The density of the ink,
Now,
all of
speaking of
it.
which, what kind of paper is it that you're using?
I use the 2-ply stuff that right now I'm working on a DC book, or DC story. So what DC sends me.
Okay, yeah. It's
Yeah.
been a while since I've gotten paper. I use Strathmore. Eric, what do I use? 200.
You use the Strathmore 200, the blue line comic.
Yeah, and I use the smooth, which
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe I might switch to not a rough, but like a vellum. And just give it a try. I like penciling on vellum, and as long as you're not using a quill, which I don't use, it's not so bad. But
Yeah, because the quill will catch on
Yeah.
the texture, right? Yeah. Oh, and just to say, in terms of working analog versus digital, I do work digitally. So I'll do 75% on the paper, 60, 80, depending on the job. And then I'll scan it in, and I'll often re-ink stuff. I'll often erase. It's a terrible, terrible habit that I've developed since I started using digital. But the digital is very, very useful, I find. I like it a lot. It's easy to put texture in, right? As
Yes.
opposed to cutting Zipatone, back in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
I like it
I've
a
never
lot.
used Zipatone, but
Literal Zipatone, right?
right. Yeah, I've never used literal Zipatone. I've seen it done though, and it's a job.
Yeah, it's I look at the old Daredevils that we did, and it was very Zipatone heavy, and I thought, oh my God, I was out of my mind. Just incredible stuff. Yeah.
Henry Jeremick says, Klaus, regardless of what pencil you inked, I always thought you did a great job staying true to the pencils, yet at the same time enhancing the art with your style. And I think that's really why you've been where you've been in your career for how many years is it now? Is it 40 years? I think it's more. It's got
51 this year.
Oh man, I was way off. Yeah. I've been doing this for 30, and I feel like I want to keep doing it for another 20, but
it gets interesting when you get to this point. I'll tell you that, David. One of the questions that I have, although there aren't that many people in my age bracket at this point left, but one of the questions that I have, talking to somebody who's been in the business as long as I have, is how does your thinking change as you get older? Have you experienced that at all, David? But you're still a baby. But
yeah, relatively, I guess it has changed. I try to fight it as much as I can. I really do try to remember the things that made me want to do this when I was young, and the things that I valued in art when I was young, because that's the kind of artist I wanted to be, and I just never wanted to lose sight of that. And I think it's so easy. There's so many artists that I really, really respect, and I'd love to try it. And I feel like, you know what, I know what my philosophy is and the kind of art that I want to do, and I try to keep that forefront of my mind. It's hard sometimes.
That's really interesting, David. I appreciate you saying that. I think that's valuable to keep that in mind. What excited you as a kid, right?
Yeah, and it's tough because we're not kids anymore, and you don't see things the same way, and so maintaining that kind of wonder is really hard, and it can be a challenge sometimes. But you know what? I still love doing it, and I still do love the things about art that I did when I was young. So I still find it, and there are so many incredible artists working in the business now. It's
I agree.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're starting, which is great. I wanted to ask though, do you have any warm-ups that you ever do, or you just go right into it?
I might warm up by doing straight lines in the backgrounds or something like that. But usually I'll start with the same way I'm doing now. I'll pick an area that is innocuous, and if I screw it up, it's not going to be the end of the piece, and just warm up that way. Just kind of like noodle around, make sure that the nib is working, Maybe do some cross hatching, find some place where I can do a little texture or something. Just
So,
test it out. Yeah, go
speaking
ahead.
of which, here, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So I've got my pen, and I'm dipping in an ink,
Uh-huh.
and nothing's coming out.
That is a completely normal problem. And, what happens is, let me finish that. Okay. What happens is that in the process of manufacturing the nib, there is grease apparently involved. And so the grease remains on the nib. And of course, if you're going to put liquid on something greasy, it bubbles.
Yeah.
So it's not going to flow. So you have to find a way to clean the nib. And there are, various suggestions I can pass on. Some
Sure.
work, some don't. Some work sometimes, some don't work sometimes. But what I'll do is swirl it around in water, put it in the nib holder, swirl it around in water, and try to clean it off with a paper towel as much as you can, or even an eraser. So
Okay,
if you can get it, pardon me? Go ahead,
I
David.
wish I could go back in time right now, because what I did actually, as I was asking, I thought, okay, if I bend it a little bit, maybe, because I've done that before and it's kind of worked, but then I've kind of bent my tip.
Well, bending, if that works, if you found something that like, the bending technique, we'll call it the David Finch bending technique.
Yeah.
If that works, then, use it.
Way to end up with a compromised quill for the rest of the life of the quill.
You can put it. Do you have another quill? You can use another quill. No?
This is my only 103. I've got a bunch
Oh.
of 102, but I only had
Okay.
I didn't realize you used a 103, so I switched over, and it is
Okay.
actually working, so I should be fine.
It nibs, and not to get the Hunt's company upset, but if you get one good nib out of 5, you're incredibly lucky.
Yeah, I found that's actually part of the reason I kind of stopped using these. You get a line quality that you just can't achieve any other way.
Right.
But the heartache to get there is so much.
That is that is absolutely the right word. The heartache. That's right. And people often talk about, and I think you mentioned it too, like I'll use like a line that looks spontaneous, or a big fat line, or there's energy to it. Sometimes that is worked over because the nib just won't cooperate. So I'll do 2 or 3 strokes in order to achieve a particular line.
We had Jimmy Reyes on, who's a very, very good inker. He was doing some quill inking, and he was doing that quite a bit. Lines that I thought he was throwing just in one shot, he would build up quite a bit. And I really learned something from that, instead of just being impatient and trying to get it,
Yeah, there's nothing, there's no, I don't feel that there's any pressure to ink a certain way. I think the end result is what's important. And if if people, on the stream want to ink with a broomstick or, a Q-tip, I'm okay with that. It doesn't matter to me. The end result, it's the image in your head. Don't you agree, David? It's the image in your head that is important.
I agree, and I'm torn, because
Tell me.
I find I'll go online, especially for painting. I'm really trying to learn how to paint, and people will ask, "How does Simon Bisley do this?" That's my favorite question. and so many people online will say, "It's not the tools, it's the artist." I'm like, I know, it's the artist, but please just tell me what he uses.
Yeah, how does he do it?
Yeah. Just give me the secret.
Yeah, give me, let me, and I'll leave you alone. That's the bargain.
So speaking of struggle, Yeah, I should. Eric, I apologize in advance for saying that. Here, let me clean this off because I don't know how it's coming for Eric right now, and we're gonna go and check it
How's
out
he
and see how
doing?
it's coming
How's he
along
doing?
here.
Uh,
How's it
is he
coming,
cr-
Eric?
is he crying?
It's all right. I throwing this is I'm just not confident in throwing it like I can, like a mic run. But I would suspect by the end of this it'll be a little bit easier. But yeah, this is totally foreign.
Yeah, it's feeling a little foreign for me too. I haven't done this it's been a few years.
Yeah.
We have a super chat from Carbon Dioxide for $5. Thank you so much, Carbon. He says, Klaus, all your artwork is amazing, but I just want to say how much I especially love Detective Comics number 568. Thank you for all your hard work and skill.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm, you know, if anybody remembers anything I've done, I feel like so grateful. I mean, I never take it for granted. So that means a lot to me. Don't you feel the same, David? I get the feeling you do.
Yeah, oh, I do. I mean, that's why we do it. You know, it's a, I don't know, a drive to do something that you believe in and something hopefully great and hopefully remembered, you know, and it's not always going to be the case. So anytime you do something that anyone remembers, always very, very meaningful. I find I go to conventions and people say, I really like, you know, this that you did. And I'm sure you hear that a lot. And I'm like, no, please, really, that's why I'm here. I need it. Thank you. It means a lot.
It absolutely does. And I'll tell you, just personally speaking, I've had a rough couple of weeks, couple of months, and I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to the first convention that I'm going to, which is AwesomeCon in like 2 or 3 weeks. And it's for that reason. You know, I need to be with my community. I need to talk to other artists, right? I need to see what's going on. I need to talk to fans. I need to hear things, you know, like we love you. And it's I'm just looking forward to it. I think it's I wonder if fans know how much it does mean to us.
Will you be going to Dallas, Klaus?
Are you talking to me, Eric?
Yeah.
Going to where?
To Dallas. I believe it's in June, I think.
Did you say Dallas?
Yeah,
Dallas. Yes, I am going to be in Dallas.
Okay. Yeah, we'll both see you there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, the first time I met you, I was in Dallas, I believe.
I think we should, before we sign off tonight, we should all go through the conventions we're going to be at.
Yeah, in so much as we can remember.
Oh, dude. Well, I have my list, so to hell with you then, David. Okay, we don't have to do that. What do you think of, David, when you ink?
It depends. I would say when I'm inking with tools I'm a little more comfortable with.
Sure.
It gets very zen, you know, and I'm just enjoying trying to create shapes and ideally trying to, especially with rendering, you can push or pull things back quite a bit. I have a very simple philosophy for how I do my line weights. That's something I really wanted to talk to you about, actually, because it's something that, so I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk a little bit just about the influence that you've had on other artists in the business. And for me, your name has always been very, very legendary, coming from Image Comics, working with Scott Williams and all of the great inkers at Homage Studios, Sandra Hope, and all of the inkers at Top Cow, Joe Weems and Bat, and they always referred back to your work because, see, this is the other problem. Does this ever happen? It must happen sometimes where you just dip your hand in it by mistake because it takes a long time to dry.
Yeah. You're not used to it, David. That's what it is.
Yeah. So Scott Williams would talk about It's a few things. Number one, just boldness of line, which is something that is not really as common as you might think. You know, a lot of inkers are a little bit more conservative when it comes to just being bold with the line, and especially I feel like the number one thing, and inking with a quill, which is something that Image was really famous for, and not really as common. I think it was much more of a brush is more common for comics, but the one that always really stood out for me is just being able to ink figures and backgrounds and be literal, but also, you know, bring a lot of energy and life to it, and dry brushing and just different techniques to just give it warmth, because inking with a quill can look, I don't know if that's the right term, but it's just how I feel about it. It can look a little cold and sterile sometimes, and just bringing, like, I feel like a bit of a meteor line and texture just adds so much warmth.
I agree with you, and I think that you're right about the quill, or the nib rather, having less warmth than a brush. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But what I like about the, I think that I have, and I might be going off on a tangent. So, and you know, thanks for the compliment. And I know Scott is a fan of my work. I mean, he said so in different interviews, and I appreciate that a lot. But I think that I have a couple of different approaches to inking, depending on the penciler, and including whether or not I'm penciling in a certain style.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a very choppy line that breaks off. It doesn't have a point to it, and I like that a lot. I like that approach very much. It's maybe a little European.
Yeah, kind of Mobius. He's very famous for that kind of a technique.
Oh, well, thank you. It's very dynamic, and it's very powerful. You know, there's a whole philosophy around a straight line is much stronger than a round line. And if I'm inking a shoulder, depending on the size of the image, of course, you know, if it's a small shoulder, if it's a small figure, you can't really do that. But if it's a larger figure, like on a cover or someplace, I will break that shoulder down into 3 straight lines rather than 1 curved line.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, David. You were going to say something?
Oh, I was agreeing, and well, I
Yeah.
guess what I would say is that's something I definitely learned from my time at Image, and it is something that being inked by a lot of different people, I found there's always, I tried to leave well enough alone. I know it's incredibly difficult inking and dealing with the fact that you're working for your own aesthetic, but you're also having to deal with the artist. So I try to keep my mouth shut. But something I find it really difficult to ignore is when something that is fairly straight line based gets really curved out in inks. I think it really loses a lot.
100%, David. I totally agree with you. I think that, you know, the bold line that you referred to, that I use and that I have used, was really, which is a whole different conversation about how technology has affected the work that we do. You know, I came into Marvel in the like 72, you know, which sounds like 1,000 years ago, but the printing itself was not very good. And in order for the figures to stand out, or in order for the image to be seen correctly, I found that, you know, being bold solved that problem. And when the printing got better, somewhere in the 90s or in the late 80s, and then of course digital, bless you, and of course digital later on, I found that personally I had a bit of a I guess a hurdle to overcome my tendency to use a very bold line because you didn't need it as much because of the because of the better printing. So I use it, I think, a little less, a little more carefully, a little more judiciously. Yeah, but
If you wouldn't mind, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to ask if you could maybe just slide it down toward you.
Oh,
Just a
I'm
little bit.
sorry. I'm deep into this now.
And
yeah, I'm so totally sorry. Yeah.
thank you. And we have a
Okay.
super chat from the Lone Draftsman for $20. Thank you very much. He says, "Hey guys, as an aspiring comic artist, I recently had my first eye floater causing mental anguish. Have you or others in the industry dealt with this? How did you manage to avoid it affecting your work? Thank you." Now, I have to admit, I have not had that happen, and I haven't had it come up. But I can imagine anything to do with your vision as an artist has got to be very, very concerning. So I hope it's something that can be sorted out and or certainly worked with. I will say hopefully it's an annoyance and not something that really hinders what you do. That would be it's a tragedy for an artist to not be able to do their art. So we certainly wish you the best.
I agree, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think do you mind if I blabber, David? If I go?
Of course.
Yeah. One of the things that I think has been helpful to me and my career is that I've always thought of this as a very long run rather than a sprint, a short circle around the track. And I've always prepared for that. I've always tried to plan for that. So when you're at a, I assume that the friend who posed the question about the eyes is of course much younger than probably all of us on this stream, right?
We're not the youngest, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and so my advice is, please plan for the long term. Take good care. I noticed, at the School of Visual Arts that kids are 20 years old, 19 years old, 21 years old, and they have carpal or they have arthritis. And, that at 20, that's not good.
No. How would you avoid that?
I think that get off your devices unless you need to work. If you need to work and it still persists, change something about it. Go analog if you have to. Tilt your table in a different way. Eat better. Exercise. I hate to sound like, like
eat your Wheaties.
Yeah, the guy who's get off my lawn, but I'll just say it. What being a little older at this point, and looking back and trying to figure out what worked and what doesn't work. What works is all the things that people tell you to do that you poo at, which means, they tell you take your vitamins, exercise, save your money, have good, healthy friendships. All of that stuff works, all of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's worthwhile listening to that and embracing that and being very, very cognizant of the fact that the most important thing in your life, besides your family and your husband or your wife, your kids, is your work. And take care of that.
truly, I can't envision a time not being able to do this. And something I really don't like to think about. So of course, it's something I think about all the time.
God, I love you, David.
But yeah, it's such a blessing to be able to do this every day that I've been able to, and yeah, I'd be willing to go some pretty great lengths to do what I had to do to be able to keep going. A big one for me has been, well, speaking of carpal tunnel, you guys all know this, that watch regularly on my pencil, I've got a lot of tape built up, and I find that really helps with my hand a lot. So recommend that. I don't do that when I'm inking because I don't press so hard. So it's not as hard as on my
That's
hand.
right. That's right. And let me, I'm sorry, David, I've just hold your thought just to confirm. The brush that I use, which I'm holding up, I put tape around the ferrule because I need, it helps my hand. It just helps my hand, you know, to have this this tape around it. It's a little bit softer than wood, and it's larger. David, go. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I don't know why I'm coughing all of a sudden.
You were talking about putting tape around your pencil.
Oh, right. And I have a real tendency, and I'm actually a little worried that this might be a negative thing. I tend to work on the couch with a lap board because I find leaning over the desk for hours and hours starts to bother my back. But then I think I'm laying on a couch all the time. That can't be good, you know? So
have you had any bad results from lying on your couch?
Not that I'm aware of. So I guess that's a good point.
I like I think I've said, you know, whatever works. People are way too rigid about you know, rules or you know, ideology. You know, whatever works for you is fine.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's see how Eric's coming along.
Let's see.
How's it coming, Eric? And I said, speaking of which, because when I think of people that worry way too much.
Do we know anybody that fits that category?
You have 3 guesses in the first 2 minutes.
As we move to camera 3, Eric, how are you?
Looking really good so far, Eric. It's looking great.
Yeah, some lines work really well, and you know, like Klaus was mentioning, doing an arc. Yeah, that's when things start falling apart. But breaking it up into, you know, segmented lines is a whole lot easier, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually fun. This is very tactile.
Oh, great!
Really, really enjoyable.
Fun is the word, Eric. You know, if you're not having fun, then really, what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
David knows me too well. Yeah.
And there have to be times when you're working when you really don't want to do it.
What's that, Dave?
Would you say that never happens?
Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah, of course. There were some series that I did, I don't want to mention any names, but where I thought, like, by the last 2 or 3 issues, I am going to die. I'm just going to die right now. And I don't know how I finished, you know, those last 2 or 3 issues, because that's a lot of pages. That's like, you know, 60 pages. And you just, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'll say it anyways. I heard this story anecdotally that there was a publisher who wanted a 20-page story, right? Mm-hmm. And asked all of the top artists in the UK. I think it was a British publisher. And all the top artists are like, you know, 50, 60, and 70. And they all said, no, I can't. I don't have the energy anymore. I can't do 20 pages. 5 pages, 6 pages, you know. And I feel like I'm almost in that category, you know. It's like, oh, my God, 20 pages? Are you kidding me? That takes forever.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, it can be a month, but to do that, you sacrifice everything else that you value in your life. That's just is what it is. And I've done years of that. And I don't know that I want to ever do that again.
So you've actually felt that you've sacrificed
Yeah, I've sacrificed my health at times. You know what? Can I really even say that? I'm not the most healthy right now, and I'm working so slowly. So I guess I could probably fit in a little more exercise. Um, Time with family. I've had times when it's dinner time, and I'll come up for that, but then I just need to go right back downstairs and work, and I'm not spending time with the kids. I'm missing. Sports, that kind of thing, things that they do regularly. I really tried not to completely, check out of things, but there have just been times when I've just had to choose a deadline. So it's nice to not really have to make that choice anymore.
There's something that I will tell young artists, young writers, which hits that point exactly, David. And most of the kids that I tell this to don't like it. So I have this feeling, and it's sort of like falls into the category of like physics or reality, or this is science and this is the way life works, which is that if you want something, you're going to have to give up something. And I don't know if that's really true, but it's been true for me. That if you really want something, you're going to have to stop playing video games as much. Let's say that,
Mhm.
right? Or you're going to have to, I can't imagine giving up a meal because that's really, unhealthy. But
Well,
at a certain point, you don't want to do that anymore, right?
yeah,
I'm
at a
not
certain point. Well, and ideally, what I don't want to do is ever make the decision that trying to do my best work is not worth it. Maybe doing less work, sure, but I always want it to be as good as possible, and I really try and keep that in mind because it is. There are times I don't want to do it, and um, I'm not really prone to depression, but I swear I feel almost depressed sometimes having to work on things that I don't want to do. It just happens, whatever project I'm on, and I really try hard to not. The one thing I don't want to sacrifice is quality because once you start doing that, in my experience, I think there's no coming back from that. It just seems like so many, and I have seen this where things start to slack, and then it's like almost no road back. I don't know. Maybe it's just a fear that I have.
I think that's a fear that we all have. That you start to slack and then there's no way back.
Yeah.
But if it's worth anything, I found that you can come back.
So I have to admit that I expected actually quite a bit more brush up to this point. And I knew.
Yeah, you're right. I think normally I would.
So why do you think
I'm just having fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got a question, Klaus.
Sure.
I've seen, I think it was Richard Friend, who's also fantastic inker, inking with a nib,
Right.
where he would pull the nib in basically where the little tangs are. He would pull to drag the tangs versus side to side.
Sure.
What do you recommend? Getting a strong, confident line. Are you lining the tangs up with the direction of your movement, or?
Yeah, I think my general direction is from left to right. I'm right-handed, so my general direction of a line would go from left to right. Mm-hmm. And then the second one would be from top to bottom. And I don't know, honestly, Eric, if there is a third. I think that might cover it. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know if tangs is the right word. I'm sure there's proper terminology, but the the pieces of metal that splay open. I was just wondering, and I was just wondering, how you manage that. Do you drag the quill a certain way, just because of the way the quill is built?
I try to get And tell me if I'm not addressing the question, but I try to get. I think that the shorter the line, the more apt I am to use a nib. And so if I'm nibbing, and most of the lines are pretty short. The brush is much better in terms of dealing with longer line. But in terms of, opening up the nib and splitting it open, because that's what you're talking about, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would do that. I would open up the nib so that, a blob of ink or a heavier line is produced at the end of the stroke. So I try not to do it at the beginning, although, of course, you whatever works. But I think, in thinking about it, I'll press down harder at the end of the stroke. But whatever works, and you can ruin your nib by doing that much faster, because it loses its flexibility from being opened all the time. And the other option is, what we were talking about before was doing 2 or 3 strokes on top of the line to thicken it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to press down hard to open the nib. You can avoid that. Eric, do you like the effect that you get when you open the nib? Or, how do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, I don't have that control very, very much, at the end of the stroke. But yeah, getting a thicker line, being able to vary the line weight with the nib is great. I just got to learn to be able to, control that properly, and I'm sure that comes with, many years of practice. But
it does, and I'm curious, and when you need a thicker line. When?
Oh, with me? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, I just pushed down a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, but why would you use a thicker line? What is the purpose of a thicker line?
If you're, if your curve or line is away from the line, or if you want to shape it a bit more towards where 2 lines meet.
Right. So you're starting to deal with the line as a shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm glad you got that question, Eric, because I was thinking, oh no, I'm not sure what I would say right now. I went blank.
Do you agree, David?
I totally agree. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say that's what I would have said too, but yeah, I went blank right there. So.
That's funny. Okay, because now I'm blank.
Spreading.
I find, and again, I might be just, blabbering. Okay, I got to stop saying that. But I find that one of the words that covers a lot of territory in executing, drawing, and storytelling, and laying out a page and inking is the word contrast. Thin lines against thick lines. The relationship that's created when you have a thick line next to a thin line, or a thin line meeting a thick line, or just the energy that's created by the relationship of thin and thick, black and white, big and small, fast and slow. Just that synergy that's created by the word contrast, by keeping that in mind, is absolutely foundational to me. Big panels against little panels. That whole notion of not being monochromatic is incredibly a really big part of what I try to do, or what I try to do, what I think about when I'm working.
I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Before I forget,
Tell me.
we had a couple of super chats here, and we have Alice McGlone, who says, sounds like Klaus is invoking Newton's third law. And I'm a little late with that, Allison. So I'm so sorry. I can't remember what it was. When I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. And now I've forgotten.
Maybe it was the if you want something, you have to give up something.
Yes, there you go. Thank you.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah. And we have a super chat from Hella Metal for $5. He says, Klaus, I learned so much from you and Carl Potts. I'm still doing comics. My favorite lesson was learning to tell an entire story in one panel.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Carl is a good teacher.
So does he also teach? I didn't know that.
He teaches at SVA, yeah. And I don't anymore. I stopped.
Oh, really? How long ago?
It's been 2 years now. I did 30 years, and I thought, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, it's a very good run. It's a long run.
I thought it was a good run. Yeah. I had some okay, and I'm gonna name drop. I had some really, really good students, and then I had some really, really shitty students, and I thought, okay, let me stop with the good students. I had James Heron as a student. I had Ian Bertram as a student.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I had Paul Kaminsky, who edits the Superman line. I mean, just a whole bunch of really good students. What's Isaac Goodhart, who's doing excellent work with James Tinian. So I thought, okay, that's good enough.
Yeah, Paul Kaminsky. I worked for him. I want to say at Marvel. I think he was at Marvel for a bit. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know I've worked for him. I've worked at both places. So
yes, of course, yeah. Which is a good thing, by the way. So if anybody ever doubts, about working for two companies at the same time or going back and forth, I think it's a very healthy thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, it is. And
tell me why you agree, David. What was your experience? Tell me.
I worked at Marvel exclusively for a long time,
right?
For almost 10 years, and then I worked at DC exclusively. And I was very nervous going to DC. I never really worked for him, and I just didn't know what to expect. I found that it's ultimately all comic fans. It's people that love the medium. Right. The editors. Actually, my first editor was Mike Marks, and he was my first editor at Marvel also. So yeah, it's like coming home. He had gone to DC a little while ago, so it really didn't feel very different at all. I'm sure there are different corporate cultures, maybe in the office, but in terms of how they dealt with the talent, they're both great. They kind of become your therapist a little bit.
If they're good.
If they're good, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I'm sure there are a few editors that would dread me calling, oh no, here we go, I'm going to deal with this guy's issue now. But if they felt that, they never let on. They were all great.
Hey, it's part of the job. You know, there is a lot of hand-holding that is required. Some more than others, right? But it's all part of the mix. It's all fun. It's all interesting. And it really is. I have not lost my affection for the medium and the people within it.
What made you decide to go into comics in the first place?
I came to this country when I was 5 years old. So I was born in Germany, and we emigrated, and so I was 5, and I couldn't speak the language. Why would I be able to, right?
Sure, yeah.
what happened was, I think we landed, not landed, well, landed. We came over by a boat. And yeah, I'm getting flashes of the boat, the ship, it was a ship. And I think it was June when we arrived, and I discovered at literally a mom and pop shop down the street from the apartment that we lived in. They sold cigars, rubber bands, right?
Yep.
Just envelopes for your mail, like stuff like candy.
Yeah.
And comics. And so I picked one up. They were a dime at that point. It was 57, 58.
Was a dime a lot of money then? Did it feel it? Because comics are expensive now. Like, I know that money has changed, but they feel expensive.
They are expensive now. They're outrageously expensive. I think that might be another discussion, but I'm not sure that's helping us. But I learned how to read and write and speak English by reading comics, and I was able to put the words together with the pictures. So I would look at the picture, and back then the writing was always redundant. So if Superman was flying, it would say Superman is flying. And so I was able to piece the language together by that. And by the time I went to first grade, I was pretty verbal. But that experience, and Jim Lee talks about this too, as he immigrated. I think.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I've read interviews, and I think at the same age, 5. I might be mistaken, but he had the same experience. And by putting the language, the words together with the images, it left such a profound impact on me, and I grew to appreciate the power of images. From an outsider's point of view. So when I teach, say, storytelling, it's very, very specific about what this image means, or how to construct an image that you want to have a specific meaning. And I've seen some of your videos, David, and you talk about, how important composition is, and the medium shot or the far shot, or, whatever, and the meaning behind it, excuse me, is just absolutely critical.
It absolutely is. It really is. And it's such an easy skill to overlook. It's so difficult, figure drawing. And inking and what we're doing now, I'm definitely finding this a challenge. I'm enjoying it, but it is so much more difficult for me working with a quill.
Okay, back to my crayons.
But I just talked myself into a corner. I forgot what I was saying.
No, we were talking about.
Right, yeah. Storytelling and backgrounds, I find are two skills that tend to get left by the wayside, and they're so vital. Backgrounds, because it gives everything context, and storytelling, obviously, because it's a storytelling medium. We're telling stories. It's not just pretty pictures. And ideally, you work a lot with John Romita Jr. Another artist that really strikes me the same way is Greg Capullo. They are both artists that I can't look at their work and not start to read the story. And it's not always the case. There are times I'll love the art, but it doesn't actually really start to draw me into the story. Whereas with those guys, I end up reading it because I don't have to read the words to really kind of read it.
I totally agree with you.
So
what is interesting? Go ahead, David. No, please go.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask, I'm spinning this all over the place in order to make this work, because there are a limited couple of degrees where I can make this pen work.
That
I've
looks
noticed
great.
the whole time you've been working, you really haven't had to spin that at all.
I think I generally spin more than I do right now. And I have a limited space right now. This isn't my usual desk that I work on. So I'm just trying to meet the situation as it is, right? But by the way, that looks great. I just looked up, and that looks great, David.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know when I should really start filling in blacks.
Now.
Okay, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding it really awkward the way that I'm.
Yeah. No, I think you don't need to outline the blacks, with a line. You outline it with your brush.
See, I should have done that from the start.
No, it's not too late. It looks great. I love that tree. That is going to be really awesome.
Thank you. I'm going to avoid a bunch of it because we only have so much time, but I did the tree because I have a very specific question about a lot of this here and how you would approach this kind of like small, kind of mossy sort of a thing. I wanted to, it's a really interesting texture.
It's a good question. You know what I'm just thinking, on my feet, I probably would try a split brush with the moss and see if that works. Maybe a little dry brush, a split dry brush or something, just to get a little texture in there. But it looks super.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm looking forward to trying the brush, trying to split. I've never done that. I'm such a penciler, and I've been doing that for so many years that inking, it tends to be really dominated by just my sense of pencil. So I don't really venture out much with it. Whoops.
Well, you're a very strong penciler. Do you agree?
Thank you. I definitely stronger than inking. We'll say that.
Who's inked you?
Scott Williams. You have.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
Now, it's a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'd actually even remember at all. It was one page, and I couldn't believe it. So I was drawing Cyberforce, and they managed to get you to ink a page, and they didn't tell me until you had agreed to it. And I didn't know you, so it's not like I could call and say, "Oh, thanks," and you wouldn't know who I was anyway. But you did it, and it was incredible. So.
That's kind of you to say. I suspect you're being very nice. I think I would do a much better job now, but I appreciate what you're saying. I do. I really appreciate it. You have a very, very distinctive style.
Well, thank you.
Have people told you that is beneficial to your career to have a distinctive style?
Yes, I think it can cut a couple of ways. I think it is very beneficial, but it also, you run the risk of, if you have a very specific style that starts to deviate too far from kind of the norms that fans expect, it can start to really hurt. So my style is pretty mainstream. So I haven't really had that problem. And that's why I'm always reluctant to just say, oh, just go crazy trying to find a style and do, whatever. It's important to, if you want to do comics, if you want to just be a fine artist or go in a different avenue, I think for comics, though, it's very helpful to do something that fans can relate to, ideally.
Do you feel that you're conscious of that as you're working? I mean, I would think you are, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and conscious of it when I'm kind of picking the artists that I really want to be influenced by, which is constantly. I do that all the time. And then I think to myself, am I just like a corporate sellout? Because I'm doing that. And that's a question. And I'd say it's a legitimate enough question,
Is that something that worries you, David?
Yes. But then I think to myself, you know what? I remember who I was when I was young, and I decided I wanted to do this for a living.
Yeah.
And the kind of art that I wanted to do, and that is the kind of art I wanted to do. So if that makes me sell, it's fine. It's what I wanted. So I do feel like it's helpful for me to kind of keep that barometer in my head, even making choices about influences.
Who are your influences?
Mark Silvestri is my biggest one, and my teacher. All of the Image guys, the Kuberts, both Kubert brothers are huge for me. Lee Weeks, I'm a huge fan. Alan Davis is, and I'm talking about especially early influences. Alan Davis was a big one for me. Then Travis Trest, who hasn't done a lot of work for a long time, but is a genius. Dale Keown, he did Hulk years and years ago in Pitt. I don't know if you're familiar.
I do, yeah.
Okay, yeah, incredible artist. Chris Pacello. We were talking actually, I think before the street party, we were talking about Chris Pacello. He's yeah. It's a long list, and it starts to. I think the biggest difficulty in finding influences. I don't know. Do you do this? Do you look at a lot of different artists, or
I,
do you
I
kind
do,
of feel
of course. Yeah,
okay,
of course, yeah.
So who do you say?
Time.
And this is your show. So who are your influences?
I think that the stuff that's in my DNA is the stuff that I looked at when I was a kid. So it's Wally Wood. The way he handled blacks, the way he handled wrinkles, clothing. They're very, very specific things that I picked from these people. I have the pupils of eyes. When I do eyes, it's Wally Wood. There's one reflection, and then there's the black pupil, and a shadow on top. That's absolutely Wally Wood. But Steve Ditko and Neil Adams and Milton Caniff. Later, I discovered Milton Caniff and people like Frank Robbins. And I try to take a little bit from everybody. Dick Giordano, of course. And later, as an adult, I love Chris Pacello. I love Stuart Immonen. I think Stuart Immonen, his run on X-Men was just extraordinary.
Oh yeah, he's like the quintessential. I don't even know. He does everything so incredibly well. Everything is just perfect. He's one of those artists. I feel like Jim Lee is like that too, where his form.
Jim, yeah,
Jim is perfect.
Yeah, Jim is amazing. Jim can do anything. Yeah. So, and he has, and he's got all these different inking styles too, which is really fun to look at because he often relies on texture or introduces a lot of texture, which I think Scott doesn't do as much or doesn't feel comfortable doing. I'm not sure. But Jim is amazing. He is truly.
Yeah, Scott Williams' inking has actually really changed lately, and he's gotten much more less bold lined and more textural, I think, with his stuff. And it's not the kind of more like I think of Dennis Cowan for an artist, or Bill Sienkiewicz, where it's just really like beautiful line. It's not like that. It's still very, very clean. Scott Williams is the master of clean line.
Yes, that's right.
But it's a very different look. And
are you talking about the stuff he inks over his own pencils, or?
Yes, but also Jim Lee. Lately, I've seen that quite a bit. Actually, it's been changing, and he's been trying some different things. When he inked me, he was using a brush almost entirely, and he had switched actually from a quill to a brush, and he was able to still get the same aesthetic. He just has so much control.
Yes, he does. I agree.
And nowadays, he's using mostly tech pens. And apparently he was doing that because he was having back trouble.
Right.
And so he started working reclined, and that makes it really difficult. And that's part of the reason why I use tech pens too. Well, they're easier for me too, but I don't have an inkwell on a desk when I'm working. So,
and of course neither does Scott because he's reclining, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's really, I think, causes the biggest change in the way he works. It's always interesting to see an artist style change, not really even so much for influences or a creative direction, but just necessity. And
Right.
then to see an artist do something so great with it, you know.
I admire what Scott has done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, there are some artists, you know, that I know that have stopped because of, you know, difficulty with their back or whatever, you know, physical.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you got to hand it to him.
Some of the line that you're doing just with the rendering, and you're kind of working on blacks right now, but looking at the line,
Right.
it has like it's not just a line. It's you know what? Here, I'm going to try and do it here, and I can't do it. So, and I've got a brush, but just to give you an idea of what I mean.
Sure.
So you'll have like a line here. You know what? Let me try and do it this way. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Oh, you mean as it gets heavier as it goes?
What I mean is that the lines kind of come out like that, but then also even kind of connect and create like an interesting shape under the. I've never been able to pull it off. I can't do it so badly you can't even tell what I'm trying to show you. But I see it quite a bit in what you're doing, and that's just it's such a. I want to say it's such an image technique.
Thanks.
But you know, it's obviously a Klaus technique that became an image technique.
You think it became an image technique?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And well, you can see it in Dark Knight. You can see it in a lot of the work that you did, you know, prior to that whole era.
Huh. You know, half the time, and I think you probably would agree with that, you know, half the time we don't know what the hell we're doing, and then we just understand it later.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, oftentimes through the perspective of other people, you know.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Let's see how Eric's coming along here. His is upside down right now.
I don't want to smudge ink.
Yeah, it's too late for me. I've already done that a bunch.
And
That looks good, Eric.
Since I just cannot render, I don't know if I'm gonna even attempt.
Are you gonna not put any rendering on there?
Dave, I'm so bad at that.
Oh, you gotta try it.
Just do it, Eric. Come on,
You gotta go for it. That's what we're here for.
All right. I will say, inking with a brush, I'm noticing that the blacks lay down so much better than the inking tools that David and I use. I don't know if you've noticed that, Dave. It's just so much more flat.
Yes, they're much better tools. They just are. I just find now. I'm sure you wouldn't agree that they're more difficult, Klaus, obviously, because you've been doing it for so long and you know what you're doing. But just from an amateur artist or an artist that hasn't inked as much perspective coming in, they are much more difficult. And I just have not put the time in to really get as comfortable as I should.
Well, you're right about the fact that it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think people should be, aware of that it does take time. We live in an age of immediate gratification, right?
Yes.
So learning something and I mean, I have the same problem, I'd love to learn the piano, but if I can't play a song by the second week, forget it. It's like I get impatient. So you just have to kind of work on that.
That's exactly how I learned guitar.
What was that? What was that?
I didn't. I tried it. I bought a guitar and everything, a nice one, because you got to go all out. And I played for less than a week, and that was done.
Anyway, and you were done.
That was it. Good enough.
How far did you get? Do you know your chords?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I can do a power chord. Do you know what I mean by that? That's like the simple heavy metal chord.
Sure.
So I can do that one, and that really is it. And I learned how to play "Smoke on the Water." Don't. That's all.
That's 3 chords, right?
Yep, that was it.
The song that is banned in all guitar centers across the U.S.
Well, that one and Stairway, I guess. Yeah, I never had to worry about playing Stairway. Samuel Reyes has a super chat for $5. He says, it's great to see Klaus as a guest. You're both big inspiration of mine. Dave, whoops. I call what I think you're talking about hatching with zigzags. Yeah, I think that's as good a name as any, absolutely. And certainly a better name than I had for it. I'm trying to describe it and draw it, and I just can't pull it off. But I know
in terms of that what you were drawing, what you were inking there. Uh-huh.
We've gone quiet. Maybe Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, we just went quiet. I thought, oh no, did I lose my sound?
No, we're just being studious.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, I'm much more used to when I'm working. I kind of get lost in my own head, and I don't talk as much, So it's
Do you
always.
Listen to anything while you're working, David?
I watch the most salacious trash on TV.
You're a reality person, a reality TV?
Yeah. If it's terrible, that's what I'll watch. Yeah, I'm watching YouTube right now. Not right now.
Right.
And there is basically it's court TV essentially, and it is people going in for traffic tickets that won't even admit that they're alive. Like they won't even admit to their name, and the chaos that ensues. And I sit there watching. I think I'm getting stupider. And why am I doing this? But I do it. So yeah.
And you can do that while you're working.
Yep.
You can do that while you're working on any part of your art, or
no, I can't do that when I'm doing layouts.
That's right. Yeah. That's
anything else though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I find the same thing. If I'm doing layouts, I have to have complete silence.
Yeah.
I can't. Why do you think that is? I mean, I think it's because it's so important and it's so difficult.
I have tried writing before, which is incredibly difficult.
Yes, I agree.
And I can't listen to anything. It has to be dead silent. And layouts are the same. So it must be kind of using maybe a similar part of the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting to, realize that. And I used to fight it because, I like music, or like the TV is on all day, I'm watching the news or whatever. But you got to turn it off. And maybe that's what you have to give up. If you want something, you have to give up TV, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's an easy, bargain to uphold.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it really is.
I'm fascinated by trash TV. I have a friend who's he and his wife. They have 2 kids, and the 2 kids are driving them crazy, right? All day, it's just the kids all day. Kids. So after they go to bed, the kids, they're 4 and 1, right? So they're really tough right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the 2 of them sit on the couch and they watch Love is Blind or The Housewives of Bel-Air or whatever.
Yep.
And it's just completely relaxing. It absolutely works for them.
Well, I feel a little better. I thought you were gonna. I thought you were gonna say I listened to nothing but Mozart.
No, not at all. No. What are your musical tastes, David? Do you have?
I do. I like just about everything. I go through phases where I really like heavy metal, like really heavy. But I can't do that for too long. It starts to get a little oppressive. So right now I'm in a Nirvana phase again. Probably like the 4th time in my life. I'm listening to a lot of. So that's a big one, and that was big when I was young. So it's. And then 70s music, especially I like Captain and Tennille and some of the really slow stuff,
Oh, yeah?
It just makes me happy. So I like a lot of that stuff.
And so do you have it on your playlist or?
Yeah. I've got a couple of different. They tend to not go together, so I've got a few different playlists just for different moods, I guess. I'm sure that's a lot of people.
Oh, of course, yeah. Of course, absolutely. It's whatever occasion there is, you have to find the right mood music or the right music for your mood, right?
I was listening to nothing but heavy metal riding my motorcycle, which is great. It's exhilarating. But next thing you know, I'm, going a little fast and it's not healthy. So that's actually, now when I'm on my motorcycle, I almost exclusively listen to like really slow, like Cat Stevens. I love Cat Stevens.
He's good. Yeah, he's
Is he dead?
No, he's good. He's not.
He's dead.
No, he's not dead.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, he reworked some of his old songs. Under the, I think he's using a Muslim name.
He is. I know that.
Believe. Is that right?
Yeah. Now I can't remember what it is, but
right.
But yes. Yeah, I love his stuff. The problem is that I do a lot of group riding, and so I'm fine when we're moving. But when we slow down, I have to crank it right down because I can't have that playing when I pull to a stop.
Right.
That would be the end of it for me. They'd kick me out.
I didn't know that you ride a motorcycle. That's kind of badass.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I ride like a chicken, first of all, and
well,
exactly up there.
I don't know what that means because never having seen a chicken ride a motorcycle, but sure.
Yeah, I ride like I don't want to get killed on a motorcycle.
Well, you don't.
Yeah,
right?
I really don't.
You don't want to get killed.
So yeah, I try to be very careful, and I'm always, for the most part, out in the country, which I heard statistically can be more dangerous in the city. But where we are, it's very, very flat and open farmland, so it's pretty safe.
You live on a farm, don't you, David?
Yeah.
Where did you live on a farm when you were a kid?
Oh no, this is all Meredith, my wife. It's all her doing. I never would have done it, and I'm glad. I love it, but yeah, no. She grew up on a farm, so.
I have no problems believing that you love it.
Yeah, it's great, and it actually does keep me healthy. I get out more and slinging hay bales, and
Yeah,
it's good.
It is very good. I agree. Do you have animals?
Yes, we've got 10 horses, we've got 3 sheep, and we've got 15 chickens.
Oh, 10 horses?
Yeah, and cats and dogs, but yeah, it's a lot.
Is it? Do you have help also?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's a lot, right?
It's a lot, actually. Meredith really does most of it still. We do have help, but she's out there all day. It's really what she does. So
it's a good life, though.
It is. I keep thinking like she's so crazy for doing it, and I swear she's miserable half the time. But
you mean just because it's a lot of labor, is what
right? But she would never give it up, and I'm miserable doing this half the time. I think when you do what you love, it doesn't necessarily mean you always love it, right?
So the old adage "misery loves company" is kind of appropriate here. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah.
Hey, whatever works, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this is much easier doing what I'm doing right now, which is just filling in blacks using the brush, which is much more how I'm comfortable.
Yeah, and you're getting. Look at the juicy line that you've got.
I have more control. Certainly, there's no argument. I have so much more control over this than what I normally use, which is a. Let's see, I've got one here. It's this thing here, and this is a.
That's Is that a refillable?
Yeah, well, the end comes off, so it's not. What? I think you can refill this. I'm not sure, but I just buy new ones and put these on.
Yeah.
It's a synthetic. They work well, but you can't get the same kind of subtlety. So,
do you think we've lost something through the I don't know, the advance of digital or moving away from, say, the traditional, because brush and nib are the traditional, really, aren't they? I mean,
They
even before
are.
comics were invented.
Yeah, they really are. We've definitely lost something from most artists moving away from that, and I hate to admit that I'm one of the artists that has kind of done that, but and then digital, and there's so many things you can do with digital, things that can't be done any other way, and I think it's great that way. But you also lose something. Uh, so yeah, you know what? I tell Meredith this sometimes, my wife. In a lot of ways, I wish I could have been an artist in like the 50s or 60s or a different era when everything was traditional. I love painting. It would have been great to maybe pursue a painting career or something, but a little more difficult now.
Is it? Is that the experience? Is that what you're finding, that it is a little more difficult? Because you were talking about wanting to do more painting.
I'd love to be able to do fantasy novel painting, but it's just not really something. The kind of painting like Frazetta, sort of. I mean, who doesn't want to do that kind of work? I'm sure if you're Frank Frazetta, and unfortunately he's no longer with us, but I'm sure that he would be able to find something. But for the most part, that kind of work just isn't being done.
That's right. That's I was going to say that there is no venue for that.
Right. So yeah, it's a little sad. There's magic. There's a few things, but just not as much as there used to be. And now we have AI art, which scares me to death.
How do you feel about it, besides being frightened to death?
I feel like it doesn't matter how we feel. It's going to be what it is. It's just going to happen. I also feel, and I've talked to some collectors about this kind of recently, about how they feel about AI art, and does that take some of the joy out of original art for them and make them value it less? And hard for me to say because I'm an artist, so maybe they're being nice to me, but they pretty much universally say that no, and it actually makes them kind of value it more because it's just so much more difficult to get something really truly handmade now. So there's still value in it.
In the handmade stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to believe that. I think that in a strange, quirky way, maybe in a much smaller way, when we started to letter digitally, so that the page could be inked without it being the balloons and the lettering actually on the page, it made, to me, those pages that were lettered on the art more valuable. I felt that they were more representative of the relationship between words and pictures and what comics is about, because comics is about the relationship between words and pictures.
Yeah, I've had more than one collector tell me before that they love buying original interior art, but they only buy older stuff because they like having the word balloons and that little bit of story, and not having it hurts it. I've never done a page that's been hand lettered. I've been
That's
doing
amazing.
It for 30 years, and I just missed the analog era.
I think you did. You just you got cut off at the cutoff.
Yep. Never had a page colored traditionally the old way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's when I started. I started at Image Comics, and it was all it was all digital. So different era.
Yeah, but it's like you say, you gain something and you lose something. I'll tell you what we didn't gain, which was the big selling point, was time. When all that digital happened and the new printing process was introduced, camera ready, all that stuff. Instead of making plates, oh, they always said, oh, it's going to save so much time. You're going to be able to, go to the beach, and stuff, None of that was true.
No,
None
it
of
never
it.
is. It never is. They
That is
come up
that
with
is
these
correct.
advances, and what it does is devalue the job. So now they just won't pay as much for it, and you end up having to do, more work. Yeah, and I found a lot of inkers nowadays. Now, what we're doing here is obviously not as common. Most comic inking nowadays is done on the computer, and it's really a penciler, inker, all in one job. Very
Yes.
much.
Yes.
And I don't know what rates are, so I don't want to just put my foot in my mouth, but I have a pretty good idea that they're probably paying essentially what they would have paid a penciler, and then just saving on the inker.
I think that's roughly true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also roughly true in the context of that rates have gone down, and they're just simply not paying enough for every discipline involved in comics, except coloring. I think coloring usually gets a pretty good rate. But
Yeah,
penciling, go ahead, David.
very difficult to replace colorists. Would you say pencilers are more effective than colorists, though?
I think that, the rates that I've been offered to pencil are less than what I was getting 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. And it's kind of across the board. I mean, it's not just me. It's everybody. And I kind of want to say, hey, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Why are we going backwards? I don't know. I'm not quite sure I get that.
We've been really, really blessed as an industry to have artists from all around the world that we didn't have before, and it's helped the quality so much. But there always comes with that a downside, and that is that there are just so many more artists to pick from. That's so they don't have to pay as much, and
that's right.
Supply and demand. So it's a reality.
That's exactly right. And artists who are, willing to work for less money, and which are always going to be there.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, as you point out, just because of the internet and the ability to scan pages and send them in from, anywhere.
Well, and we're so much more open to the whole world because everybody speaks the language now, which used to be a barrier, and it really just isn't. Which is, I mean, it's been great for the medium.
Yeah.
Not for rates, but
yeah, that's right. My feeling is it is what it is. You just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out.
Well, I will say, though, that original art has really bridged that gap quite a bit, especially if you're working. And this is why I so much advocate working analog the way that we are. Original art is worth much more than it ever was before, and it's only increasing and becoming more valuable. And it does make a big, big difference. As a matter of fact, most jobs that I do, that's my major consideration in terms of, now I try not to just plan what I do. Oh, I can sell the art, and so I'll do this job.
Sure.
Do that a little bit, but I'm not reliant on the rate that I get paid. I'm more reliant.
No, and I think I kind of picked this up along the way, but the advent of someone like Jim Lee really reinforced it, because not only is he a terrific artist, but he's also a very smart businessman.
Yeah.
And you have to have some capacity for both in order to succeed. You can't just expect, people to come knocking on your door and hiring you and giving you money, and you gotta work it. You gotta hustle. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
it's very, very true. Absolutely. And I think even if you're not a great businessman, just being somebody that people can rely on and can call and won't scream at them and, freak out, that goes a very long way.
Well, you know that saying about you have to have those 3 qualities.
Yes, yeah, and I've said that on the stream a couple of times, and yeah, there's a saying that definitely goes back.
It
If
is.
you want to,
It's
if
true.
you want to say it, because I'm sure some people here have not heard that one.
Well, go ahead. You say it, David.
Okay, so you need to there are 3 qualities, and one is being good, one is being on time, and the other is being likable. They can get along with you, and if you have any 2 of those 3, you'll do fine. Basically, is the saying.
And if you have all 3, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you'll be around for a long time.
Yeah.
And there are times I wonder, I look back at older eras and I see artists that I think are good, that I just don't know the name, and it just seems like they kind of came along and were just gone, and I don't know why. And I think sometimes people find a different profession, and then other times, maybe they only had one of those qualities.
Yes, I can think of a couple, and I can think of a couple who went into a different field, like storyboarding or working for Disney. Designing characters, right?
Is that something that's ever tempted you at all?
Not really. I think mostly because I never had the opportunity, and no one ever came up to me and said, "Hey, we want you to design the next something." But also because comics has been really good to me, and I've managed to make a living. I can pay my bills and stuff like that, and so it satisfied me. You know what I mean? It kept on working, right?
Well, and there's just no other business out there where you can go to a convention and people will know who you are and care, and that does mean a lot. It's a big deal for me, for sure. I mean, it's a performative job. And so the audience is so important, and to be able to actually have a connection with the audience, as opposed to a lot of design jobs where your audience is effectively your art director.
That's right. And you're right about the performative part of the job. You're absolutely right. It's you have a connection with the audience. And by the way, part of succeeding, I think, in this business is not relying on just your page rate. It's doing commissions, it's selling your original art, it's hustling, it's figuring out what else can you do to augment livelihood.
Yes, which in my case, because I'm not a businessman, I'm very, very fortunate to have Jason Schachter at Essential Sequential. Shout out to Jason. I think we were thinking maybe he might come on tonight. He didn't come by, but
Son of a bitch.
Well,
Jason was in the chat earlier.
Oh, was it? Oh, see, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
He was in.
Yeah.
We didn't even see him.
Okay.
That was pretty early on.
Speaking of the chat, we have a super chat from Osmosis for $10. Thank you so much. And he says, "Great having you guys inking and talking today. I'm thinking of building a portfolio for being a contract colorist." I'm running out of breath. Sorry. What medium is best to work with these days? I have tried both traditional and digital skills. Now, I will say, and if you want to weigh in too, for coloring, it's really a digital medium. If you're coloring someone else's work, I don't know of now there have been colorists that have used watercolor and that kind of thing. It's incredibly rare. I wouldn't really stake any kind of a career on that, truthfully. So yeah, you really want to. No, it doesn't matter if you use Photoshop or what program. Photoshop is one that I know, but yeah, you'd really want to focus on digital, I think.
I agree. For coloring, yeah, it's digital all the way. Yeah. I was investigating, Blue Line. David, are you familiar with that?
The company, the paper, like the brand of paper?
The using coloring blue line. So do I need to explain it? Should I?
Yeah, if you don't mind, because I don't know.
No, the blue line was the way Dark Knight Returns was colored, and some of the coloring that I did on different projects. A blue line means that the black original art is reproduced in blue, which does not reproduce, it does not print. The color light blue does not print. And so you can color on top of the blue line, the paper that has the blue line drawing that you've done originally in black. And then you put an acetate over it that is the black line. And the acetate is secured on top of the blue line that you colored, hand colored, and is printed that way. A photograph is taken, I believe, and then it's a complicated process, but that was how Dark Knight Returns was colored. And I think, 300, Lynn Varley colored 300, and some of the other stuff. But I wanted to get back into hand coloring, and I asked around to see if anyone was doing blue line anymore, and they weren't. They were not. So I have to figure out a different way of hand color. But go ahead, David.
I will say this. Now, inkers, I've done this quite a bit where I've been late sending in pencils or whatever, and inkers will actually ink with blue line. And so what you do is you just take your pencils, bring them into Photoshop, and just switch everything out to blue, which is very, very easy. You print that out and you've got blue line.
Right. I'm thinking that there must be a way to augment the hand coloring with digital and make it work that way. But I haven't tried it yet. I want to get to it.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. I could imagine a scenario where if you were coloring traditionally, some of those color plates could be worth quite a bit. Like there are Disney plates that are worth an absolute fortune. If they're done nicely, especially for the right project.
Well, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. Incredible artists. I mean, there are such incredible colorists working in comics too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, and it makes a big difference between, something that you actually like the way it looks.
Yeah. So Eric jumped in for a minute there, but I don't know, Eric, if you wouldn't mind jumping back in here, I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to do it to you because I want to see. So you're doing some rendering.
If you want to call it that. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I know we don't have too much time. So that's looking really good,
Eric. It does. It looks really good.
That rendering is really, really working. You're cheating.
Eric, if you're hesitant about the rendering that you're doing, I think what you're doing is completely works.
It does. And you know what, if you are more comfortable bringing out and I agree with Klaus, like you have to ultimately, for a piece that you want to be nice, you need to use the tools that will get you there. So if you're using,
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this with a nib. There's no way.
It's a tough
Eric,
way to go.
are you interested in doing this as a career, or what? Or is this for fun, or what are you doing? I don't know. So pardon my ignorance.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'd like to do full time. I've got a huge passion for painting, but really anything comic art is definitely something I'd like to do.
Well, it seems to me that you can.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, he's doing great stuff, and the painting stuff. Like we've really been exploring painting together, especially the two of us, and it's been a real journey. So it's been good for both.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I'd love to see what you guys come up with. Okay, just to announce, I'm done for the night. This is as far as I go.
Looking amazing.
I'm on strike. I'm gonna have my little iced tea here, and
All
I'm
right.
gonna relax. I'm gonna watch you guys. You ink pretty fast, David.
Well, thank you. It's definitely easier for me, I find, with a brush. So I feel like I've been kind of cheating a little bit too, because I did all this with a brush. So I'm at the point now where I want to do some of that texture. And I feel like before we go, you mentioned a split brush. How do I do that?
You're using a pretty small brush, so it might be difficult to split it. But usually the way I split it is I will take a razor blade and just slide it into the brush so that it splits, not without damaging the brush, but making the brush, rather than having one point, it has 2 points, of course, right? So you can take a knife or any other, might work better, if the brush were
A little
thicker
bigger.
or bigger. Yeah, but
I'm
I
gonna
think
try it with this
you
and
can
see
get
what I
it. You can get it, yeah.
So I've got
And actually, that looks about right. And actually, if you combine that with a dry brush effect, I think you've got a pretty good texture that will stand out against the rest of the.
it hasn't even really dried out yet, but look at that.
Yeah. But I would I would show more of the split, right?
Okay.
Right, which means less ink.
Okay, yeah, I'm being a little.
No, you're playing, you're experimenting. That looks pretty good. I like it.
Look at that. I'm coming at a different angle, and so it's a different effect than what I had here.
Yeah.
But I don't quite know what this should look like. So I know what you're going to say, though.
Pardon? Say it again.
I know what you're going to say, though. You're going to say, really, it's whatever you want to do, and I already know what's coming.
God, I'm that freaking predictable already. It's
I'm
hey.
gonna see if I can get this just a little more dry. All right, here we go. It seemed dry, but
yeah. And brushes are they like to trick you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really gotta.
Well, I've got a whole bunch of this texture to do, so let's bring it over here, and eventually. Yeah, I can't keep ink on the brush when I need it. Now that I want it to dry out, forget it.
No, it's absolutely true. You're absolutely right. Yeah, David, I get the feeling that your style is a very laborious. It's you have a style, that requires a lot of patience. Am I wrong about that?
No, it's true. It can be very laborious. Yeah, that's the right word for it. Yeah.
I don't use it as a pejorative by any means. I'm just describing it that it because you feather quite a bit.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit here that I haven't done any of that with, and it still needs to be done. But
so you would go back in normally and work some of that stuff over, add some feathering, or
oh yeah, quite a bit all through here. You can kind of see it in the pencils there still.
Yeah.
So I have quite a bit more than. And now, strictly speaking, I could leave it like that, I guess.
That's right.
But I like all the little lines, and I'm such an image comics. That's my roots, and it's what I love. And there are times I think, wow, why did I pick this?
I've tried to be simpler in my approach, and be more like, I don't know, Alex Toth or Tim Sale or someone like that, and I just can't resist adding, texture and lines, and I there's something about lines that that I just particularly, I love making them. I love looking at them.
Yeah.
I like
And
the volume,
I love artists like, Alex Toth and Chris Samney is one that really comes to mind.
Oh,
Current
brilliant.
artist that I think is incredible and very simple. I love it. But I do like all the little lines and
I do too. Yeah, it's a curse, I think.
and
Stanley, his when he does his like one drawing a day,
Mhm.
I mean, it so annoys me. He's just churning out these wonderful designed and composed pieces, and he's doing them at one a day. I can't believe it. And then he's clearly doing other work, besides just the
Oh yeah.
commission.
Well, I've heard his layouts are basically finished pencils, and I've also heard when he does his perspective, he fakes all of it, which
That's interesting.
are fairly common, I guess. I don't know. I can't fake it. I don't have the ability. I have to actually put in the points, or it just turns to mud. Whereas he can just put everything down. I think part of the reason why he's so fast. It's a great skill to
Well,
have.
my theory is, and I have the same problem, David, where if I don't use perspective or the horizon line, right, and all of that, then it just falls apart.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it falls apart is because I put, and this is my current theory as of Thursday, right, today, because I've just put too much in the panel. And everything needs to, be aligned with perspective, and it's just too much. And I think Samney probably has figured out how not to put too much in the panel. No? What do you think?
I think that actually makes a huge amount of sense to me, because all the lines really do need to follow the perspective, or you break the illusion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you're right. We have
What
a
is
super from-
I'm intrigued by the phrase forced perspective, because I think that, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. Do you? I get the feeling forced perspective is violating the stringent part of perspective, cheating.
Well, that's the way I would understand it. So, with any perspective, I'm going to, okay. So I know you know this, but just for you guys watching, if you don't know, so I've got a horizon here, and I'm going to put one point here and one point here, and I'm going to draw some lines out. I'm going to do my best without, I'm fighting the natural angle of my arm going that way. Okay, so, and this is all fine because all of these diamonds are longer than they are deep. But once you start to go down here, holy, forgive my terrible line there, and you start to get a diamond shape that is longer this way than it is wide.
Oh, really?
That would be like forced perspective, and that kind of, you don't see that in life. And I mean, I guess that would start to be behind you or whatever it is in your field of view. So it starts to look fake, but it also can look incredibly dynamic. Joe Quesada uses this kind of perspective so well in so much of his work, and it's wrong from everything that you learn, but it looks great. Every time I've tried it, it just looks wrong. So I stay away.
See, I think there's something to that, David. I think there's, the idea that it's very dynamic and very interesting. That I tend to be a conservative penciler.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about this before we went on, like in terms of page layouts or not using a diagonal panel, right? Because I would just never do that. But I think there's something about, forced perspective or using a diagonal panel or violating the very, how should I say it, the very exact theory about perspective, as an example, is something worth exploring. It's something that has value, and I think can lead to an interesting place.
Yeah, I think I really should try it. I'm so influenced by Joe Quesada. He's such a big one for me. And I love that about his work. And I've always kind of stayed away. And I really should try and push it a little bit and see what I can get from it.
What job influenced you by Quesada? Do you remember?
I want to say everything, but
Was it the Batman that he did with Denny O'Neil? That was inked by Kevin Nolan. Or was it inked by Kevin Nolan, I think?
he did Azrael.
The Azrael, that's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
and that was Kevin Nolan. Now, it was that, but the first one for me was X Factor, because that's where I first found his work. It wasn't, I think it was a little later on for him, but that's where I found it. And then from there, it was Azrael. And I still bring that book out all the time and use it all the time. It's like a essential reference book for me still.
Tell me what you see in there, if you don't mind me pressing her a little bit.
Well, there's
because I agree with you. I think Azrael was amazing. Yeah.
And this is all Joe Quesada, because now with so many of the inking jobs that you've done over the years, you actually are really responsible for a lot of the shadow and the drama and a lot of that stuff. And it's just not, especially years ago in the pencils, it's something that you were adding. And I think people are really not aware of that so much. But with Joe Quesada, he was very specific with his shadows, and he's great with it. And I love the way that he arranged his shots that way. His anatomy, especially his legs, the way that he was constructing his knees and some of the muscles and the connections, and with Kevin Nolan, because Kevin Nolan was kind of softening his work a little bit, and maybe bringing out some of the shadows that Joe Quesada had a tendency to put shadows in the light a little bit heavily here and there. I'm criticizing Joe Quesada right now. Listen to me. But I think the two of them just made such an incredible artist. And the faces, the lighting on faces was I've got a few Kevin Nolan books that are big for me that way, just for faces. And the combination of the two of them, because he was actually, you can see a lot of Kevin Nolan, but you can see where he's really true to the Joe Quesada stuff.
I agree. Well, Kevin Nolan is an amazing talent. So,
absolutely.
Including his own pencils that he colors, which is kind of amazing.
We've got a couple of super chats here I don't want to miss. We've got Carbon Dioxide for $2. He says, Klaus is an awesome guest. Tonight's Batman rules. Yeah, it absolutely looks amazing. I love the textures in the cape. And that's most of all the little breaks are just created with a brush. Yeah.
And I would go in, I think, probably extend some of the cape here. I'm looking at it on screen, maybe lowering this. Do some spatter, just juice it up a little bit. But I think this is good enough to finish and work over a little bit. And, I'd be okay with this as a commission or something, or as just a piece.
And we've been talking so much. I wanted to mention that while you can't talk about it, you're currently working on a Batman project. You can say that much. And so
that's right. But I can't say anything about it because DC would kill me.
Right. But I want to make sure you guys all know that Klaus is working on a Batman project, so look out for that. Also, you can find Klaus on Instagram, and that is Klaus.
It is K Janson NYC.
All right, and I think we've got that on the top of the chat too. So if you're not following Klaus, be sure to find him on Instagram. And we'll finish with Jim Klein has a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Jim. It says, Klaus, thank you for joining the stream tonight. It's been a treat watching you work and hearing your insights. What do you think have been some of the most interesting changes that have happened in the industry during your career? Now, that is a very broad question, but I think that's a good place.
I think that, so I'll answer it in a broad answer. I think that one of the things that I've learned through the length of my career is that art and style changes not so much because of an individual introducing that into the medium, although it certainly is that, and Neil Adams is an example of that, but because of the technology. When we got to better printing, people started drawing and inking in a more complicated way because it was printable. It was actually it actually worked. So I think one of the things that I've learned is the technology often leads the medium, and by technology I mean digital or better printing or photo reproduction, better paper, all of that. When we get an improvement in the physical product, we get an improvement in the work that is printed on that physical product. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a great note to end it on. And it's 10 o'clock on the button. So
Wow. Hey, David, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. I had fun. And I will see you in Dallas, right? Will be the next time we connect. Okay, very good.
Think so. Yeah. Good. Well, there, if not sooner, but certainly there.
Very good. I couldn't ask for anything better.
Well,
and to everybody who popped in, I think I can speak for David. Yes, we're very grateful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you for saying that. And we couldn't do it without you guys. And I wouldn't be able to have incredible guests like Klaus Janson if it weren't for you guys watching. So I really very, very much appreciate it to all of you. So have a great night, everyone. And we'll see you very soon. Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to mention a review stream. We're going to do a review stream. It's coming up. Eric, Tuesday?
Sure.
Okay, Tuesday night, 8 o'clock.
8 Eastern. Yep.
8 Eastern. Review stream next week.
Yes, I'll get my time zones right next Tuesday.
Yes. Yeah, we almost lost Eric because he mixed up the time zone, which between the two of us, we've both done that enough times. But.
It happens all the time, Eric. Don't worry about it. But, just know that the two of you are awesome. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll
Thanks.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.